Every story we tell is a journey, a thrilling adventure that will keep you hooked from start to finish. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing our community come together from all around the world. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Tomorrow, we have a special story just for you. Trust us, you won't want to miss it. See you on the next adventure. Rugby star's brash challenge to a royal guard leaves the crowd in awe. The late afternoon sun bathed Buckingham Palace in a golden glow as Jake Cannon Arm Mitchell strode confidently through the crowd. At 6 feet 5 inches and 230 pounds, the Super Bowl winning quarterback was a towering figure, his broad shoulders filling out the navy blue hoodie emblazoned with his team's logo. The championship ring on his right hand gleamed under the sun, a bold statement of his dominance on the field. Fresh off a historic victory, he was still basking in the adrenaline rush, soaking in the attention from the murmuring tourists who had begun to recognize him. "Hey, is that Jake Mitchell?" someone whispered. A few fans approached hesitantly, phones out, eager to snap a photo with the MVP. Jake was happy to oblige, flashing his signature grin as he signed autographs and posed for pictures. The energy in the air was electric. He loved this feeling, the recognition, the admiration. He thrived in the spotlight, and today, the world felt like it was his. That was until he spotted him. Across the courtyard, a royal guard stood at attention, his red tunic crisp, his black bearskin cap towering, his posture rigidly perfect. The contrast between them was almost comical. Jake, loose and relaxed, feeding off the crowd, and the guard, unmoving, completely indifferent to the chaos around him. Jake smirked. "Man, that's gotta be the easiest job in the world," he muttered to no one in particular. "Just stand there all day looking pretty?" The people around him chuckled, a few shaking their heads knowingly. Tourists had tried to get reactions out of the guards before. It never worked. But Jake wasn't just some tourist. He was an elite athlete, a man whose entire career was built on reading opponents, breaking defenses, and forcing movement. No one had ever been able to ignore him, not on the field, not in interviews, not in any room he walked into. And he wasn't about to let that streak end here. Tossing his football into the air, he let it spin on his fingertips before catching it effortlessly. He took a few steps closer, bouncing the ball off the cobblestone ground with controlled force. The rhythmic sound cut through the quiet hum of the crowd. "Bet that guy wouldn't last a second on the field," Jake said, his voice carrying. "I mean, come on, standing still isn't a skill." The guard didn't flinch. Didn't react. Didn't even blink. The crowd stirred, sensing the brewing confrontation. Cameras lifted, whispers grew louder. But the guard remained still, his gaze locked straight ahead. Jake grinned. "Let's see if we can change that." Jake Mitchell spun the football in his hands, his signature move before every big play. The tourists around him sensed the shift. What had started as casual banter was turning into something more. The energy crackled in the air, a familiar charge Jake knew all too well from the final seconds of a tied game. Only this time, his opponent wasn't another team's defense. It was a single, unmoving soldier. The royal guard stood tall, his polished boots planted firmly, his grip on his ceremonial rifle unwavering. The man didn't even acknowledge Jake's presence, and that was what got under his skin. He had faced some of the toughest defenses in professional football, men twice his size trying to take him down. He had felt the roar of thousands screaming his name, waiting for his next move. But this silent defiance? It was infuriating. Jake took a step closer, just outside the guard's personal space. The football bounced off the cobblestone once, twice, each impact sending a dull echo through the courtyard. He smirked, tilting his head. "You got ice in your veins, huh?" he said, his voice playful but carrying a challenging edge. "I respect it, man. But I bet you're wondering just how good my arm really is." He tossed the ball lightly between his hands before gripping it tight. The crowd had shifted back slightly, their voices hushed with anticipation. Everyone knew the Royal Guards were famous for their discipline, their unshakable focus, but Jake wasn't just any guy testing the limits. He was a champion, an athlete trained to control the moment. His fingers tightened around the laces. "Think fast, soldier boy." With lightning reflexes, he launched the football toward the guard, not hard enough to injure, but enough to demand a reaction. The ball cut through the air in a perfect spiral, the kind of precision pass that had won him championships. But the guard didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't blink. The ball struck his chest dead center, rebounded off the rigid tunic, and dropped to the ground with a dull thud. Jake blinked. He hadn't expected the man to catch it, but he had at least expected a stumble, a shift, something. The tourists gasped. Some chuckled nervously. A few raised their phones, realizing they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Jake exhaled through his nose, shaking his head with an amused chuckle. "All right," he muttered, picking up the ball, eyes flicking back to the guard. "You got my attention now." Jake Mitchell wasn't used to being ignored. The moment that football bounced off the guard's chest like he was made of steel, something in Jake shifted. This wasn't just a game anymore. The silence, the stillness, it was more than discipline. It was a challenge. His competitive nature burned hot, the same fire that had driven him to break records on the field. He bent down, picking up the ball slowly, rolling it between his palms as he took another step closer. The guard remained frozen, his grip firm on his rifle, his expression unreadable beneath the towering bearskin hat. Jake let out a low chuckle. "Man, you're good. I'll give you that." A few tourists murmured, their anticipation thick in the air. Some had their phones out now, recording, sensing that something bigger was about to unfold. Even the ones who had been laughing earlier had gone quiet. They could feel it too. Jake took a breath and adjusted his stance, shifting into game mode. His mind calculated the next move before he even realized it. If the guy wasn't going to react to a straight-on pass, maybe he'd react to something else. He spun the football once, then faked a side throw, shifting his weight at the last second before rolling the ball across the guard's polished boots. It was an old quarterback trick, meant to trip up a defender, make them react. Still, Nothing. The guard didn't twitch. Didn't acknowledge him. Didn't care. The crowd murmured again, a mix of amazement and disbelief. Jake clenched his jaw. It was one thing to be ignored, it was another to be completely dismissed. He took another step forward, now right in the guard's space. Come on, man. Nobody's that good. You're telling me there's nothing I can do to break you? His voice carried that same cocky edge that sports commentators loved, the same one he used to rattle defenders just before a snap. But here? It had no effect. Jake exhaled sharply, shaking his head. All right. You want to play the tough guy? He spun the football on his finger, a signature move that usually got the crowd going. Guess I'll have to turn up the heat. And then, he did something he shouldn't have. With a sudden flick of his wrist, he bounced the ball sharply against the guard's leg, not hard enough to hurt, but enough to be felt. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Jake smirked, expecting a reaction. A flinch. A glare. Something. But what he got instead? A shift in the air. The kind of shift that happens right before impact. The moment the football made contact with the guard's leg, the atmosphere changed. The playful jeers from the crowd died down. The amused expressions turned into something else, anticipation, maybe even concern. Jake Mitchell knew he had crossed a line. But that was the point. He thrived in high-pressure moments, in the milliseconds before a tackle, in the stare-downs with defenders who thought they could take him down. He'd built a career on being the one who never backed down, who always pushed the limits. But now, standing inches from the immovable figure in red and black, something felt off. He wasn't in control anymore. The guard, who had been as motionless as a statue until now, made a move so precise and measured that it was almost unnatural. He lifted his foot slightly, just enough for the football to roll away, then planted it back down with an audible clack against the stone. Still, his rifle remained steady. His posture, perfect. But something had shifted. Jake felt it in his gut. This was no longer just a silent standoff. The tourists sensed it too. Phones rose higher, cameras zoomed in. Some whispered. Others held their breath. Jake swallowed hard but forced a smirk. All right, man, you win. You're tougher than I thought. He bent down to grab the football again. The guard moved. Not much. Just the slightest adjustment, but enough to make Jake freeze. It was a warning. A silent but clear message. Don't test me again. Jake's fingers hovered over the ball, his heart hammering in his chest. His instincts screamed at him to step back, to let it go. But his pride, the same pride that made him a champion, refused to back down. With slow, deliberate movements, he straightened up, the ball firm in his grip. Come on, man, he said, voice quieter now. What's the harm in having a little fun? Silence. Jake exhaled sharply, stepping forward one last time. You think just because you're standing still, you've already won? He scoffed, spinning the football in his hands. That's the thing about guys like you. You think discipline is the same as strength. He tossed the ball lightly, just a short arc, right at the guard's chest. Testing him. The moment it left his fingertips, he knew. Because this time, the guard moved first. Jake barely had time to react. Before the football could even complete its arc, the guard's white-gloved hand shot up with lightning precision. The ball never reached his chest. It was caught midair, held firmly in a grip so steady it barely wobbled. The crowd gasped. Jake froze. He had been expecting one of two things. Either the ball would bounce off the guard's uniform, proving his point that these guys were just standing targets, or the guard would ignore it altogether, staying locked in place like some programmed robot. But this wasn't part of the script. The guard stood still, but his presence had shifted. A silent authority radiated off him, making it clear that whatever had just happened was intentional. Controlled. Measured. Jake forced out a nervous chuckle, rubbing the back of his neck. All right, nice reflexes, man. I see you. He reached out casually, expecting the ball to be handed back. The guard didn't move. The ball remained locked in his iron grip. Jake's smirk wavered. A new tension spread through the crowd. This wasn't just a simple game anymore, this was a message. The Queen's Guard wasn't just a decorative figure in a fancy uniform. He wasn't there for show. He was a soldier. A veteran. A man trained to act with precision and control in situations far more dangerous than this one. Jake's pulse quickened. He had spent years dodging tackles, reading defenses, using his instincts to control the momentum of a game. But now, he wasn't in control at all. His fingers twitched at his sides. He should just laugh it off. Walk away. But the bruises on his body from a lifetime of pushing through challenges wouldn't let him. His pride still burned. Okay, man, he said, his voice dipping lower. I get it. You're the real deal. He gestured at the ball. But let's see if you've got the same hands in motion. Jake stepped forward, too fast, too aggressive. He reached for the ball. In one swift motion, the guard pivoted. Jake felt the world spin. 1 second he was standing, the next, he wasn't. The guard had barely moved. No brute force, no heavy impact, just a subtle, precise redirection of Jake's momentum. It was effortless. Like swatting away a fly. Jake hit the ground hard, skidding against the ancient stone, his breath stolen from his chest. The crowd erupted. Tourists gasped, some cheering, others standing in stunned silence. The guard, meanwhile, hadn't even flinched. Jake stared up in shock, his heart pounding. The football, his football, was now on the ground beside him, placed neatly at his side, like it had never left the guard's control. And still, that perfect, unwavering posture. No reaction. No smugness. No need to gloat. Just discipline. Jake exhaled, his pride bruised far worse than his body. He sat up, rubbing his arms, forcing a laugh. Okay, he muttered, shaking his head. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah. Slowly, he climbed to his feet, dusting off his jersey. A few people patted him on the back, some laughing, some in awe. Jake knew how to take a hit. But this wasn't a hit. This was a lesson. The kind that would stick with him long after the game was over. What do you think? This wasn't just a clash between strength and discipline, it was a lesson in control, respect, and true power. Now, we want to hear from you. What would you have done in Jake's position? Do you think he learned his lesson, or will his ego bring him back for round 2? Have you ever witnessed a moment where discipline triumphed over arrogance? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and the best ones might get featured in our next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories of discipline, strength, and respect. See you in the next one.